Let's go ahead and take a look at the Keynesian model, or the Keynesian economic train of thought first. Remember, this was built up by John Maynard Keynes, the father of macroeconomics, and he argued that economies can get stuck out of equilibrium, meaning that we don't transition to the long run right away, but there are going to be some short run effects or some lag impacts in the short run. So therefore, some of the macroeconomic variables that we see, wages and prices, are sticky in the short run, so they are slow to adjust. And Keynes argued that an increase in the money supply or a change in the money supply would lower interest rates, leading to increased investment and aggregate demand. However, there's a very big caveat with this, and that's only going to be when the economy is healthy. So remember, when Keynes came up with his particular model, it was during the Great Depression, when economic times were very, very bad and when the economy was unhealthy. So in this instance, he believes that monetary policy is actually very ineffective for a variety of reasons. So let's go ahead and take a look at these few reasons and build up the Keynesian economic train of thought. So here, the Keynesian model. Keynesian model. And with the Keynesian model, as we outlined already, they believe that monetary policy does have its intended impacts. So here, we'll start off by saying that monetary policy, whether it be expansionary or contractionary monetary policy, it has its intended impacts, or effects, meaning that as we work through the entire transition, as the money supply increases or decreases with these open market operations, and that's going to have an impact on aggregate demand. So here, we'll put aggregate demand increases. So expansionary monetary policy has its intended effects, aggregate demand increasing on the economy, but only when the economy is healthy. But only when the economy is healthy. And that is the very big condition that we have right here, the big caveat. Remember, this is what the Keynesians are going to believe in. The Keynesian model, he built up the model under the Great Depression when everything was very, very bad economically. So they believe that the monetary mechanisms and channels are all going to break down when the economy is unhealthy. So monetary mechanisms break down when economy is unhealthy. And there are threefold reasons why Keynesians believe that monetary policy is very ineffective during times of downturns or recessions. Number one, it may not lead to greater investment. So might not lead to greater investment. So remember that the main sort of goal of monetary policy is to reduce the interest rates. With expansionary monetary policy, it's to try to push the interest rates down as low as it can to stimulate consumption, investment, and net exports. However, as we've already noted, that with investment, this is the sort of part of GDP that fluctuates the most with where we are in the business cycle. So when times are very, very bad, when the economy is unhealthy, a very, very low interest rate may not incentivize businesses and firms to undertake even more investment. So they become fearful in this sense. So this is reason number one why Keynesians believe that monetary policy is ineffective during recessions. Number two, we can tie into people like you and I. So people / consumers also become fearful. We become fearful for the same exact reasons that businesses and firms do so as well. So even with low interest rates, you and I may not go ahead and buy big ticket items like refrigerators, cars, mortgages of the houses, because economic times are bad and we're trying to budget and pinch every penny. So even with low interest rates, this may not incentivize us to go ahead and buy these particular items. So consumption may not be affected and investment may not be affected as well. Finally, the last reason that we see why Keynesians believe that monetary policy is rather ineffective is because people tend to hoard money during these times. So people hoard money because there's little incentive to save. Because there is little incentive to save. So people hoard money because there's very little incentive to save. As interest rates get pushed down lower and lower, we are not going to go ahead and put money into the banks. We're just going to go ahead and hoard it, put it under our mattresses, and if there's not a lot of liquidity or not a lot of money being put into the economy, then that can slow down the economy by quite a lot. So let me pose you a particular question. Can interest rates ever go below zero? Can interest rates ever turn negative? Let's put it that way. In application, they really shouldn't turn negative, although it has happened in a few countries in the past, most notably in Sweden, Switzerland, and a few European countries. But in application, interest rates should never turn negative. Why should interest rates never turn negative? Well, with a positive interest rate, remember, when we put money into the bank is actually paying us some type of interest to hold our money. If interest rates ever turn negative, that means we would have to pay the bank some type of interest to hold our money, and that would be something that we would never sort of agree to. So that's why it really shouldn't happen in application. So remember that the main goal of monetary policy, expansionary monetary policy, is to push interest rates all the way down as low as it can. However, interest rates can never go down below zero because of this fact. So we really shouldn't have negative interest rates. So if interest rates are very, very close to zero, like they are right now currently, they really can't go down lower past zero. And when this scenario occurs, this leads us to something known as a liquidity trap. Liquidity trap. And a liquidity trap just tells us that, hey, it's a situation where interest rates are so close to zero or very, very low that the interest rate can only go up. So here, the liquidity trap is a situation where interest rates are so low, that people believe that interest rates can only rise. That interest rates can only rise. Only rise. So here, because we have a sort of threshold of how low interest rates can go, basically if interest rates are very, very close to zero, it can lead us into a liquidity trap where expansionary monetary policy isn't going to push interest rates down any lower. So because of this is the primary reason why Keynesians believe that monetary policy is rather ineffective, this liquidity trap. And the best example that we have of a liquidity trap is in Japan in the 90s. And interest rates in Japan were artificially made low in order to sort of keep up its exports and just to boost its economy. But this led to a housing bubble which eventually burst and led to their lost decade. And that was a very, very bad economic time for Japan. And they're still feeling the impacts of that even to this day. So threefold reason why Keynesians believe that monetary policy is rather ineffective when the economy is unhealthy. It may not lead to greater investment. It may not lead to greater consumption because we as individuals become fearful, and it also leads to a liquidity trap. So what do Keynesians believe is most effective in us getting out of the recession? That's where we go and take a look at fiscal policy. So changes in government spending, changes in taxes, and changes in transfer payments are all very effective during economic downturns. So if you believe the Keynesian train of thought, you're going to go ahead and rely on the federal government just a little bit more in order to push us out of the recession. So with all of this lays down the foundations of the Keynesian economic train of thought, the Keynesian theories, and a lot of people nowadays do believe that the Keynesian economic theory is sort of the one that we should be following just because of all the applications it can hold. However, with all of this, there is one final economic theory that we need to go ahead and take a look at, and that's just going to be the analog of the Keynesian theory with the monetarist model. So I'll detail all these sort of things in the next